Hello, I'm Adam Zonder, the production manager for the Hangar Theater Company, and welcome to another episode of In Good Spirits. As we have gone virtual for the 2020 summer season and everyone is working from home, I'm currently sitting in a very empty theater, which is odd considering it is summertime. However, between the ongoing pandemic and this being my 25th season with the Hangar, we thought having some conversations with the various designers and technicians with whom I have worked over the years would be fun and in good spirits. I would like to take a moment to give a big thank you to our series sponsor, Meyer Farm Distillers, located in Ovid, New York. Joe and his team produce various award-winning vodkas, gins, and my personal favorite, bourbons. Please check them out at meyerfarmdistillers.com. Today, I'm having a conversation with my friend and sound designer, EunJin Cho. How are you today, EJ?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So let's get into this. So you're originally from South Korea.
Yes, I am.
When and how did you decide that theater and sound in particular was the career for you?
It's interesting you asked that. When I was in high school, I was part of a broadcasting club in our high school as an engineer. And I was fascinated by a big equipment that had faders and buttons and knobs. And I thought it was the coolest thing that I could manipulate sounds the way that we were desiring to. So I wanted to come to the state and study recording, not necessarily theater, sound design. And so after graduating high school, I came to the state right away. And my parents say, we will fully support you, but you will have to start at a very smaller college where you can learn how to speak English, where we feel comfortable sending you. So I said, okay. So I went to school, and when I came to the States, you couldn't really have conversations with me because my English skill wasn't up to par. So it took a lot of patience from other people to carry normal conversations. And I remember going to cafeteria, looking at the title of a food that says fried okra. I was like, what is okra? And I always carried my dictionary looking at what okra was. So that's how I started my academic career in the States in a smaller college. And I knew that I felt a little bit of a void because I came here to study sound, recording in particular, and the university that I was at didn't offer it, but they had theater minor. And I said, I will do anything sound related. So I walked into the professor's office and I said, I understood the word standby. I understand the word go. Can I press play on the, well, I'm about to give out my age, cassette deck. Because in our high school, I learned how to listen for the cue. You take the tape out, you flip it over, you use your pinky to go anti-clockwise a little bit and then cue it and play. And so she said, okay. And so while I was there for a couple of years, I became part of the theater community. And then I transferred into the university that offered the Bachelor's of Science in Recording. Because again, although as much as I love theater, I came to the state to study recording. So I made a transfer and I enjoyed tremendously learning about technologies and recording in general, but there was always part of me that missed something and I couldn't really figure out what that was. And then one night I was sitting in the recording studio doing mixing sessions and I realized I missed the human interaction, the laughter of the audience, the excitement of not knowing how that night is gonna go, you know. And so how many hours can you listen to the kick drum sound? And so after I could go to grad school because they wanted me, actually wanted me to come back home, but I wanted to pursue further. And so without having theater background in bachelor's, I went to grad school to study sound design in theater. And ever since then, sound became part of who I am. And so that's my story about how I got into theater and sound design. I think subconsciously I knew that I wanted to do sound design because when I couldn't communicate how I felt, I played music to my American friend. And
Mhm.
so I watched Matlock, how Boy, Boy Meets Girls and Golden Girls,
Mhm.
and then listen to country music. And that's how I picked up English a lot. And How Do I Live Without You used to be my song because I had such a homesick, and everybody understood when I played that song, like what emotions I felt. And so I think subconsciously, I always knew that that's what I was gearing towards too, but I didn't really know until I went to grad school.
And that was, and grad school was Cincinnati Conservatory. Grad school was
Yes,
Cincinnati
SCCM in
Conservatory.
Cincinnati.
Yep. Um,
Yep.
so what is it about sound design that you really enjoy? And how do you get excited about a show?
Wow. Um, I think sound design is such a emotion invested way of communication. I think that it provides safe place for us to feel and be vulnerable without feeling judged. I think you can always say, oh my God, that music made me cry as an excuse and make it sound like it's okay that you cry. And so for me, sound design has such a way of like intimate ways of communicating with the audience by either commenting what's happening in the moment of the story or acting as an extra character to fill the gaps that they are missing or to connect the whole story together cohesively. And so that's, yeah.
Great. Um, so are there big differences between doing sound in the US and doing sound in South Korea?
Yes. And so I didn't really get to experience that until I began my academic career. We had an opportunity to take the cast and the artistic team to Seoul, South Korea, which is my home ground. And if my memory serves correctly, I think LSU was one of the only US universities that participated in theater festival amongst like 56 Korean universities one summer. And it was really interesting because sound was considered as an element of design, yet it wasn't really considered. I think now um, we have made and paved our ways to have some sort of a weight and collaboration towards how the story is being told. But unfortunately, I think Korea was a little bit few years behind where we are now in terms of sound design for live theater. So it was most of times the directors will dictate, I would like to have this piece here. I would like to have this sound effects here. And you sort of kind of function more of an engineer to curate that rather than approaching as a member of an artistic team. So instead of hiring sound designers, I think they began hiring composers first. But nowadays, they are pretty good and fruitful group of sound designers that are working actively in theater in Korea.
Interesting. Um, so your season at the Hangar was in
Mhm.
2003, where you were an intern in sound. And that
Oh, thank
season, we did Top Dog, Underdog,
you.
Caucasian Chalk Circle, My Fair Lady,
Yes.
Fixed, and Stones in His Pockets.
Yes,
Do you have any recollections of that season?
yes, I do. I worked with such an amazing designer, and I think that that's why my memories of Hangar is so fantastic because alongside of the designer, you
You
guys
mean
were
Sarah
actually
Pickett?
yes, Sarah Pickett. Yeah, you guys were my first summer stock theater ever, and I was so nervous going into it. But Hanger and Sarah gave me an opportunity to grow not only as an artist but also as a person. I remember when I communicated with Sarah that I had such a strong interest in sound design, she took me to all of our design meetings, and she collaborated with me creating our own Foley work. I remember when you come into the theater, there used to be a really heavy metal door, and we had to create it like a sound of an impact of an object. And so I remember Sarah and I are like using different objects to like create impactful sound. And I remember when we did My Fair Lady, somehow sound cable got cut that was going to the speaker. So like we had to like rerun the cable. I remember, do you remember us losing power? I think
Yes.
it was pouring rain.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sarah was then residing in Syracuse. And so she was in Syracuse, and it was me and another intern. But Sarah was so good at communicating. We knew her system really well. And if we didn't do that, I don't think we could have loaded in the entire system without her being there. But she taught us so well in ways that we were able to do that and still open the house. And so I have a lot of, maybe one season, but I think that the weight of what Hangar means to it could be millions of seasons. And I have such a fond memories, like personally, to walking outside of theater and feeling like the stars were just falling above you. I mean, what a beautiful sight that we watched every night coming out of theater after a long day of work. So yeah.
Nice. Very nice. So you've been working with LSU for 10 years, going on more than that now. So why did you decide to head into education?
When I was first year in grad school, my GA assistantship was to work in the sound lab. And so not only to maintain the sound lab, but also to teach undergrad students. And that's when I realized, oh, my heart like expanded in ways that I couldn't really articulate. And I just loved how I could make them see things from different perspective. And so after talking with my mentor, he gave me an opportunity to teach my second year and third year as my assistantship. And I loved every second of it. And so that's when ultimately I knew that I wanted to begin my career as a sound designer in academia. I just didn't know when that would happen because I was pretty young coming out of grad school.
Mm-hmm.
So when I graduated, I was lucky enough to land into the position at LSU. The sound program wasn't really there. So when I got there, I had one student who was interested in sound. And I always thought, I don't know, like I wanted to work in Chicago. It was never my desire to work in Broadways or New York, but I wanted to work in Chicago theater scene. But I think my desire was sort of kind of just cause, never really having solid reasons. And the more I stayed in academia, it fulfilled me in ways that I thought not possible. And so first year became second year, then third year, and then I opened my eyes and I've been there for 10 years.
As a sound designer, do you have a preference for musicals or non-musicals?
I think non-musicals.
Why?
I am emotional person and I react to written words more than I do with words and music at the same time. It's really interesting if you think about it, because as a sound designer, you would think that I would equally or more heavily react to the music, but I react to and grab towards written words more. And so I love the possibilities of being able to guide the audience through the emotional journey of the whole story as a whole, or through individual journeys of each characters. I like having the opportunities to do that. it's more intimate for me. I'm not saying that musical isn't, but I think it's just jives better with my personality.
Gotcha.
Am I
Uh,
speaking too fast? When I'm excited or nervous, I tend to speak fast. So stop me, Adam, if I am
nope,
like,
no problem. No problem. Uh, so over your career, what are some of the shows that stick out to you?
uh, I think the one that I recently did with LSU, I had an opportunity to go back as a visiting professor, and we did a play called Oil. So the whole premises is how oil industry shaped the world that we live in now. But if you dig deeper, it is actually about women's journey, pursuing and battling between her dream of being a career woman versus following and pursuing her true love. And with the decisions that she makes, they become they play greater deal of influences to her daughter that she left the relationship with. And so I really related to that play because recently in my life, I went through a stage of wondering what my purpose is and what my dreams are. And I think that there is a moment where I realized that they don't necessarily align like like it used to.
Mm-hmm.
And so that play, I had a great time working on.
Nice. Because obviously, I'm assuming that family plays a lot into it as well.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. To be honest, I don't think I ever imagined myself to be at the stage that I am and to have a family. I've always been very goal oriented and career oriented in ways that all my kids that I have graduated from LSU were my kids,
Mm-hmm.
and that were enough for me. So I never thought that I would pursue into having my own family. And about 5 years ago, there was a moment where my husband, Steven, got an amazing offer from VCU in Richmond, Virginia. And Ayden was 3, Amelia was 1 month old. And so uh, we were at a point where we had to make a decision what we needed to do. And the decision that we came to was to follow his career. And that was quite an experience for me personally as a person and also as an artist. And I think because of that experience now, I approach theater and I approach teaching differently than I have before. So.
Very understandable. Um, so, as a not white theater maker, what are some changes you would like to see to make theater more accommodating and welcoming?
That is a great question. I think awareness for the fact that there are lack of non-white theater makers, that I think that certain visa situations actually make offer challenges for artists to pursue their careers here. I think I am one of the very rare case that I was fortunate enough to given the green card from the academic institution that I was working for, but it is a very complex, as you know, complex process. And so I wish that there are more awareness in the theaters that are able to support international artists, their visa situation, so that they can actually explore having more opportunities to collaborate here. And I think that subconsciously, I don't want to say that it's only the differences between non-white or white, but I think all of us that come from different cultural background approach the way of storytelling differently. And I think that the more opportunities that are given for us to be heard would be fantastic.
Great. And then based on the current pandemic, where do you think theater and particularly sound design might have to head?
I don't know. Can I say that I don't know?
Sure.
I don't know because I struggle with my logical approach of where I think it's gonna be post-pandemic and my emotional approach of where we're gonna be post-pandemic. I was telling one of my kids that theater will be back because of the people who make it. The people who make theater are resilient, problem solvers, they're courageous, and they know how to love wholeheartedly. It's always been experiences with the people that I get to create theater. That's the characteristics of the people that I used to describe. So I know theater will be back. Logically, I question how and when. And I think for sound, it will probably bleed more into the digital format of sound than what we are used to, right? I mean, you guys are doing Zoom productions, and that's a completely different approach of sound design than doing it in live theater. You know, I'm type of designer that loves to localize sound, loves to submerge audiences into the overall world and hang speakers in locations where I can play off of like characteristics of sound, it bouncing back or being observed with the different materials and diffuse and all of that. But I think in digital world, you have to think about three-dimensional sound into two-dimensional way of what is my audience listening and how is that complementing or supporting the story being told, because it's sort of kind of like in a linear way of the 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 actors' voices and sound having to play nicely in a smaller size playroom, I guess,
Mhm.
than being able to play it in a live space.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, Great. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to once again uh, thank our sponsor, Meyer Farm Distillers. Thanks for joining me today, EJ. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.